America's presidential election, baby. Donald Trump won a second term with 295 electoral votes and over 50% of the popular vote. And the question on everybody's mind right now is, as you know, Joe, how is this going to affect Hollywood? Is the thing everyone's talking about, the thing everyone is most concerned about. Well, we're going to run through it because, first of all, it depends on what you mean by Hollywood. Do you mean Adam McKay and Viola Davis, or do you mean the C-suite executives who run the studios? Because for all of Hollywood's posturing and also scapegoating as an axis of American liberalism, you can bet your ass that the studio heads were relieved, if not ecstatic, about the results of the election. And why is that, Joe? Well, we're going to go through it. And of course, it comes down to money. It's the same reason that the stock market jumped on Wednesday and the world's 10 richest people got a record 64 billion richer in a single day, because Trump 2.0 projects to be very light on regulations and very kind to M&A, mergers and acquisitions, which has not been the case for the last 4 years. I mean, however you end up scoring the Biden administration on everything, the FTC was the most antitrust and pro-consumer we've seen, I think, in like 50 years.
Absolutely.
I mean, everybody, Republican and Democrat, had become very friendly to the concept of mergers and acquisitions. The last 4 years, though, was as antitrust as we've seen the federal government. And it was led by the so-called Big Four regulatory appointments of Lena Khan in the FTC, Jonathan Cantor at the DOJ Antitrust Division, Rohit Chopra at the Consumer Financial Protections Bureau, and Gary Gensler at the SEC. Together, the Big Four signaled a specific antipathy to consolidation across a number of industries, blah, blah, blah. Basically, they were not as friendly to mergers and acquisitions as previous federal governments, and they were had a much more pro-consumer focus. And the first, I will say, Trump 1.0, the first Trump administration, also had its antitrust moments.
Yeah.
They opposed the AT&T and Time Warner merger, which ended up going through because the courts overruled them, and they investigated Google's search monopoly. But as with all things Trump, this was just about punishing enemies and not about some sort of ideological position on mergers and acquisitions. And that's why I think you saw one of the most, out of all the depressing things that came out of the election news this week, I think one thing that was just like, was really depressing was you seeing Bezos, Zuckerberg, Larry Ellison, of course, Elon Musk, all of our, tech billionaires tripping over themselves to offer the most hearty congratulations possible, the most sort of elegant, florid, oh, he did it. What a triumphant story that he overcame all of this hardship, aka his own fucking monstrousness, to become president again. And the reason all those guys who have not had a history, particularly Bezos, of being sort of on the same side of Trump as Trump on things, the reason they're doing that is because the next 4 years project to be very mergers and acquisition heavy. We're going to see lots of corporate mergers and acquisitions over the next 4 years, particularly in Hollywood. And they know that Trump does not have a firm position on mergers and acquisitions. It's just if he likes you, it'll go through, and if he doesn't, it won't. He won't. He'll fight it. But they're expecting him to be very deregulatory and very friendly to M&A over the next 4 years. And that's why they're all, I think, pretty happy about him being elected and not Kamala, who would presumably have continued Biden's trajectory of being more antitrust. Maybe not. But Trump definitely projects to be more friendly towards mergers and acquisitions. And what are we talking about specifically in terms of Hollywood? Well, we know Bank of America has already advised Warner Brothers to explore a sale. We know Lionsgate is in trouble. We've been talking about that forever. We don't really know what the Ellisons are going to do with Paramount. Is this just sort of like are they just going to flip it in 4 years for a profit, or is this something that they want to control long term? But regardless of that, we are in store for lots and lots of mergers and acquisitions, and they will probably go through without a hitch with Trump in the White House. And just this September at the annual at the annual Bank of America Media Communications and Entertainment Conference, Sony Pictures CEO Tony Vinciquerra said Hollywood is in for chaos, quote, over the next 2 years. He predicted the industry is in for a wave of mergers and bankruptcies and sales and all kinds of fun things, and that this is the key, only the biggest companies will survive. The goal, as it has been over the last, Half Century is going to be too big to fail, too big to fail, too big to fail. Get as big as you possibly can, and then you can ensure your own, at the very least, your own longevity. It's not about the product. It's not about consumer experience. It's certainly not about art or creativity. It is about getting as big as possible and preparing for the next sale, the next merger and acquisition. Joe, that's a little sort of laying out of the playing field. What are your thoughts on what Hollywood really thinks about the election of Trump and what it portends for the next 4 years in Hollywood and the entertainment industry?
Well, you set it up. There's going to be more M&A, and Hollywood is desperate for it because Hollywood and its studio heads have long believed that consolidation is necessary, though not for art, like you said, but for a different thing that you said, which the argument that they might make is it's about consumer experience, and we, the consumer, might be sympathetic to some of these ideas. I'm going to read from Zaz. So David Zaslav, the head of Warner Brothers, he is an M&A guy. He ran Discovery for 15 years, and then it was his idea to merge with Warner Brothers, which he successfully did, and then he became the CEO, and he wants to continue to merge and consolidate. Because yes, you need to scale, but also because the way the media ecosystem is currently arranged is fucking stupid. So think about it. He calls it generational disruption. Oh my gosh, I don't have the quote.
But while you're looking for that, I have a quote from Ari Emanuel, which I think also sort of points to this. Ari Emanuel, the CEO of Endeavor Group Holdings and TKO Group, a major power player in Hollywood for a long time now, he predicted that after the next 4 or 5 years, we will end up with about 5 or 6 major streamers / content providers left when all of this media industry consolidation dust settles. He said, I think you're in a situation where you have Paramount, Warner, Disney, Comcast, there's other players. I think there will probably be 5 or 6 remaining streamer or content providers, Netflix, Amazon. We're all going to see what happens with Apple, YouTube. He said this during the IMG Redbird Summit. Then we probably have 2 remaining over the next 5 years from that group, and for some people that supply them, whether they be actors, writers, directors, non-scripted, or sports, that's a very good, healthy ecosystem with people that will have very big and deep pockets. That will take approximately 2 to 3 years to play out.
Yeah. Think about when you go on Apple TV right now or your Roku box, and then you want to go watch something. Like you, our listeners, might have like just enough savvy to be like, I feel like this type of content might be on Max because it's a Warner Brothers picture. Can you imagine how small a percentage of person that is? So when my mom turns on the TV and she wants to watch anything, what the fuck is she supposed to do?
Yeah.
Because all the time, FX is, well, that's a bad example. FX is on Hulu, but like sometimes the licensing deals flip around, and then The Office is on Netflix one day, Peacock the next day, broken up, split apart.
Well, we saw with Universal's animated properties like Minions that comes from Illumination that's under Universal. They will window it on Peacock, then they'll move it to Netflix for exposure, then they'll move it back to Peacock. So there's all this sort of jockeying around and positioning that goes on.
So as entertainment companies stupidly turned themselves into tech companies, which was folly, but now it's too late. Cat's out of the bag. So now we have to readjust all content products, and they think that corporate consolidation can streamline the consumer experience. Another way, that's true. And then what's also true is they're going to make a lot of money. So that's not a surprise. And by the way, I'm not having any sort of like good or bad about that. In fact, it's not about Trump really. Mergers and acquisitions happen under Lena Khan. We just saw Skydance bought Paramount.
Great point.
And they don't happen under Trump. Like Trump, his anti-tech bent, they didn't want AT&T to merge with Warner Brothers, and that ended up passing. So what I'm saying is, M&A comes and go, little wishful thinking from Hollywood bigwigs that now there's going to be some sort of saving of their miserably set up companies. And like Trump's not the answer to Hollywood salvation. The answer to Hollywood salvation is born out of like creativity and connection and to engaged audiences.
Yeah, and Trump is so unpredictable. I mean, who knows if the next 4 years will be friendly to mergers and acquisitions or not. I think that's why you saw this rush, because there has in the past been this sort of antagonism between tech and Trump. Even if behind the scenes that antagonism was sort of an illusion, at least it played out in the public as an antagonism. That's why I think you see all these guys rushing and tripping over themselves to sort of, kiss the ring right now is I think they think they can play the Trump game, that they can just flatter him, and then when it comes time for their merger and acquisition to happen, Trump will be like, oh yeah, I like that guy, let it go through, right?
Yeah.
But who knows? I don't know. But the thing that we know for sure is that and it's always been true. I mean, this is the city that produced, Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon and Ben Shapiro and Andrew Breitbart. Hollywood as a liberal city has always been a bit of an illusion. Certainly an overstatement. And you can bet that all these studio heads would much rather see Trump in office than Kamala in office in terms of what they think it portends for the future of their companies.
I do find it so interesting, apolitically, just in a general sense, that Hollywood and entertainment, from a revenue standpoint, so small compared to other companies in ag and healthcare, tech, all these humongous sectors and places that we talk about, Brett, like Warner Brothers and Lionsgate, Universal, fucking peanut city, right? Mm-hmm. But so why do these bodies have so many regulatory bodies, and like why does, when it's a big deal, when Paramount, who fucking cares, tries to merge with Warner Brothers, who fucking gives a shit, because that is how powerful and valuable media is, because it is the prime connector to the population. It's just amazing that there's so much regulation in such a small industry, because it is so valuable to own the media, which we just saw in this election. Owning legacy media this time around, less valuable than owning some new media outlets, aka the old ways of connecting with people aren't going to be as advantageous, whether for your vote or for your dollar, as these ways of the new media's connectivity via the phones, the internets, the algorithms, et cetera, et cetera. That's the problem that these guys are freaking flipping out about, and they think if they can just all smush together, rearrange their parts, fire 75% of their labor force, that they can get their cap sheet looking good enough for the next fucking sale. So you're right there, Brett. But should be an bear with me on my words, an exciting time of mergers and acquisitions in Hollywood, aka gossip.
It'll be a very eventful 4 years.
Gossip,
very eventful
Hollywood
4 years.
Gossip for the podcast. We'll see.